Thanks everybody. Let's get started here for our Saturday strategy session for May, last Saturday of every month. We're going to look at typically one or two strategies that work with the patterns. And so today I want to talk about looking at the complex structures, complex indicator structures, and how we look at those, really how to anticipate the completion of those structures. So it's something really important. A lot of the material is in my Harmonic Trader Volume 2, and it has a lot with what we're been looking at, especially intraday setups and looking at just the temporary nature of complex structures. So let's start there. I'm going to jump ahead really quick and just let's take a look at what a complex structure looks like. Complex structure really referring to any indicator structure where it's an M or a W in the extreme. Now here is a bullish illustration. Again, this is just an ideal model, but what we want to see, if this is relative strength, can be amplified RSI as well. And we're going to look at some examples in a minute, but usually what we're going to see is some kind of reactive move. This will be a deeper test. You have a W formation, and we will see some type of reaction off of that extreme reversal. But the secondary retest and the fact that this typically leads to some type of eventual retest, especially in the indicator, gives us an idea that any move will have some kind of pullback on it. Now look at really quick, just look at one example here. Go to our next slide. There you go. Here's $CAD 4 hour. And again, when we have that W formation, again, usually it's going to be deeper. The number one thing you're thinking is that it's going to take more time in the zone. So instead of maybe 1 or 5 bars, you might deal with 20 or 30 before that fully comes out. The other thing is we're going to typically see that short reaction. So we don't expect the blow off move, typically going to come up to 1 or 2 and then come back for a retest. But here's a good illustration of that. And we see that the complex formation formed, came out of the zone initially, but still took the better part of 20 bars or more before the reversal got going. That's the thing we want to look at. And then the other part of that is looking at how the response of it. The bearish is much the same. It's an M formation, and again, the whole formation has to be above the zone. Looks like something like that. There's gold 4-hour chart, or that's daily chart. And you see the M formation also with the software. Okay, the red line, and we talked about this on Wednesday in our Gartley group. We were talking about this upper dotted line. That's really where that marks where the last complex formation, that's the high reading of the indicator, is to be drawn. So in case of this formation, the indicator reading almost hit 80. Still took a couple bars here, came out of the zone, but again, we're looking for, we're looking for that to take a longer time. And the other part of it that really for today is to look at the nature of what happens after this quick reaction. We started on Wednesday, really trying to get into differentiating what this M formation and also look at some of the signaling that the software does. So now what we want to look for is something where we can anticipate the completion of not only the complex structure, the retest, but the RSI band. So that whole RSI band, I'm going to take off HSI on the bottom. And again, we're looking for complex formations. Now, what I want to focus on today is the difference really of utilizing amplified for that kind of signaling or interpreting, where when we see a complex formation and amplified, we're going to get more signals, but there's a couple of things to look at with amplified where we're going to see things that RSI is not going to show us. When We do see these situations in RSI. They're usually going to be more demonstrative, sure, but not nearly as many signals. So let's take it off. And let's look at the complex structures and amplified. Bring that back. And we'll look at, this is a 5-minute NASDAQ, and I also want to look at a 233 tick. Just a couple things of that we can look at intraday to understand where the complex formation needs to come back. We always treat that complex formation as an inevitable retest. So on Friday, we had that complex formation. It was all the way back here with the big move up. Then actually that was Thursday, and coming into Friday session, here was the corresponding retest. So again, every time we see complex structure, and this is amplified RSI, what we're looking for is that larger test all the way back down to the 30 level. The current marking of what amplified shows us, much like RSI, will go on when it hits the 50. Meaning, let's go back here. Here's the complex structure. There's the first one. There's the first time it goes on. That's a larger complex structure here. You have a small RSI BAM. Even in that formation there, if you're looking for some kind of confirmation, let's say there was something right here at 94.50, 94.40, just the simple fact that we have an M formation is going to tell us this is going to take, should take more than 5 or 10 bars. And if you see it continuing higher, that's strength. That's the aspect of complex structures where if it's not giving you that confirmation, if it's not even reacting, the predominant trend will continue until we have that secondary test. In the software, that's marked by this red line, where that red line ends, which is about here on the price chart. We start looking for bearish opportunities. That's how we look at it. But again, we have 1, 2 complex structures, and the fact that the red line, that turns back on right here. So we have another complex formation that's setting up. So when we get down back to the oversold area, all the way down in this area, especially with that deep retest, we are thinking eventually we've got to retest to complete the RSI BAM. That's why this green line is so important. If you see, or sorry, the red line is so important, because that's going to come back in terms of the indicator and at least require that retest to complete the entire RSI BAM. And in this instance, matches up with the crab pattern. The retest comes right at target 1. So that we know that no matter what, until that full RSI BAM completes, we know that this will come back out of the zone. Sometimes this takes the better part of an entire pattern, most of the session, where you see 40, 50, 70 bars before we have the retest. Sometimes it's a tighter conglomeration. What I'm really talking about is just identifying the complex structure, looking at that red line for this bullish return, and we'll look at a green line situation, a bullish, the pattern for the bullish return. Come over here. Go to the 233 tick here from Friday. S&P's had a number of these situations as well. Again, I think this is great for looking for intraday opportunities, continuation opportunities. Again, we're looking specifically at amplified RSI here, and this is on Harmonic Pattern Collection. Now, what I want to consider, and again, if I'm looking at the red line, I see that confirmation come in all the way up here. This is 233 tick. There it is. Okay, here's a pattern right at the hop level. Let me remove all this other stuff. There's a pattern right at the hop, bat pattern, up at that hop level. But look at what kind of confirmation is going on here. Actually, you have two of them. You have two complex structures. Pretty deep also. That's the thing with amplified RSI, that if we see that above 80, 90, close to 100, that's still going to require more time. And you'll see how strong that is when that goes into the zone. But even identifying simply that M formation on amplified tells you that don't be surprised if this thing takes more time to retest. I would rather see the completion of an entire RSI BAM, and that is noted by this red line, where that red line stops. Now show me the pattern. And this is a great situation because look what happens. If we're looking for the opportunity to where the red line ends, that's the completion of the RSI BAM, we're looking to the red line, looking to the right of that line in terms of a timing issue, and also knowing, look, we're at a hop level, pretty strong right through the zone. So that tells you that the delay in the execution, and again, it's still only a type 1 trade. That's the signal, that's the kind of behavior of a failed PRZ. And a lot of times when you see a complex structure like that and it just continues to bypass the zone, it's a failed structure. I've been waiting and trying to highlight these situations where, look, the red line ends right there, line it up, start looking for the short opportunity to the right of that, and then the final piece of even monitoring the downtrend off of that. There's no continuation there. No continuation in the situation, but it shows you at least the optimal area where to take the shot. This is something that, again, we've been looking at the complex structures here for our amplified RSI indicator, how they usually lead to just a small reaction. We'd rather see the whole RSI band complete. Let me show, get a bullish one here. Because again, here's another bearish situation. And I think this is pretty good because look, let's just assume every complex structure is going to be retested like this. Now here's something that I want to just really focus on. I know it's tough to see, but I'll take off the patterns for a second. If we see a complex structure, okay, and every time we know that that's going to be retested, no matter what the pattern is, okay, we're not going to expect much off of, if there's a pattern up here, we're not expecting much. And here's the reason why, because if we assume that that's going to happen, draw the trend line, okay, that's it for that reaction. You line those two up. We expect that kind of return. We're not surprised when both the indicator has broken out here, especially above the 50 level, and there's no follow through on price. Now let's put the pattern in. So here's the pattern that was up there. And I think a lot of you know where I'm going with this, but take a look. Here's a retest up here of, okay, from earlier in that session. There's the first test of the bat. And take a look. It's another complex structure up here, up at the hop level. So every time you see that, and even then you will see that automatic highlight go on, and that goes on all the way back here. We assume that this is just a reaction and treat it as such every time. So look at what the structure is there up at the zone, especially if we've got a hop level trade. Hop levels have been great with bats and deep crab patterns. Here's a really nice HSI, everything that we'd want to see. but we would still assume that this is just going to be a reaction. Now I'll do one more here for on the other side of it, and let me just take off the pattern. All right, here's a little situation on even a perfect crap. Check out this, even the bullish situation here. All right, so that top side, that signal went down. Another deep oversold reading. This is a 233 tick chart, so on a NASDAQ on the NQ intraday, no surprise, it can be quite volatile. And look, that's 94.50. All the way down here is 93.80. That's 70 points within a 1 hour time frame. But there's ways to be able to understand where that bias will occur. On the downside here, okay, another complex structure. We already assume that that's going to be retested in some regard. And it does, completes the RSI BAM. There's some kind of reaction there. But now you got the combination of not only is there an RSI BAM complete here, but we know that that bullish RSI BAM has to come down and test that to be the final divergence signal. And where the green line ends in this case, that's where we're looking for a pattern. Same type of a thing. To the right of that green line, that's where we're looking for opportunity. Trying to simplify it, there's a lot behind this RSI BAM strategy. I know a lot of you are aware of it. I'm trying to simplify it and really just direct your eyeballs of where to be seeing this with amplified and how to highlight those signals. There is a feature that I would like to add and that will just mark those RSI BAM areas, much like we have with the HSI arrow. But it's pretty easy. Just see where the red line ends, mark it. That's the end of the RSI BAM. And some of these other situations where you have back-to-back are really just kind of ping pong from one pivot to the next, but quite reliable. Let's take a look really quick for what we have for this week and leave everybody with one or two things to think about. Here's NQ. Now, one of the things I've been saying a lot in the sessions lately has been the market's ability to come back, retest, recover from intraday losses, and let's go to a 30 or even a 60-minute chart. We're hitting up against a bunch of different patterns, but here's a few of the current RSI BAM and complex structures we need to pay attention to. And just kind of remove this. Now, we had a major move up into Friday, late Friday, and one of the signals and one of the things that I wanted to mention is, how do we know that this is even going to be a complex structure? And one of the signs, especially with amplified, is if we get above the 80 level. Once we get above that 80 level, a lot of times we're going to see this thing roll over and take its time, much like it did back here on the 26th. All right, big penetration above 80 and still took about 10 bars to roll over. We have the same kind of situation, and I expect this into Monday, probably go higher and take its time to form that structure. But even again, if we get an M formation, we would only expect some kind of reaction. Let me go to S&P 500 really quick. Well, before I do, since we spent so much time on NASDAQ, here's the final kind of assessment with long-term NASDAQ NQ and what's, in my opinion, really behind what we see currently. And we've got another full overbought on the weekly. And looks like we're going to get another M formation up here, especially if we get into next week and this thing comes up, spends more time rallying, breaks up new highs. This is the wrong chart. But similar. So on the weekly basis, if we take away everything that has happened this year and everything going on from a news perspective, and if we apply what I was saying on those 5-minute time frames to a weekly time frame, what are we thinking? That's a big complex structure. This has been on its way to return for the full complete RSI BAM test. And probably the strongest thing that has to happen is thing act quite strong on the breakout and form another complex structure. If we come up, have a big impulsive move, and then pretty quick reversal, that would be the start of something I think more significant. Either way, we're still higher within that framework, and maybe as high as looking at two key numbers, looking at the 113 or the 1618. That is the definition of RSI BAM and the two ratios. The minimum ratio is the 113. Currently that's at 10,200, let's call it 10,170, or the big 1618, and that's up at 11,700. That would be another 1618 extension, but we're going to see what happens as we get into the zone over the next couple of weeks. We have much the same situation on the S&P 500, and these are all in kind of an RSI BAM retest. I think this is even better on RSI. Let me bring RSI back in, because I know that was for S&P that had a much like NASDAQ, a big complex structure. There you go. This was, okay, yeah, on the bullish side. This was the interesting thing we were talking about back in March of finally getting on the weekly time frame, an overbought signal, where it actually marked the end of a bullish RSI BAM. Complex structure all the way back at 2009. And then we finally get that oversold reading on the weekly. So this is a much bigger low. This is even more important than the December 2018 low. A lot to consider here, but those kind of dynamics and the fact that we eventually did have the retest. It took 10 years, but we had the major retest where not only is this a major confirmation point, but this is truly the make or break support point of the whole 10-year rally. So if there's going to be a larger bear market, I think there's going to be plenty of time after this is violated. So until then, we'll look for the retest up here to the oversold or overbought. A lot of these dynamics are just bouncing back and forth. I show them on intraday a lot in the live sessions. On the daily time frames, they give you even better bias. Here is on the daily time frame, the S&P. Again, you have it on both. We have it here on amplified and even regular RSI. On the bottom here, there's a complex structure has broken out. If we're really looking for a sell signal, where that whole amplified RSI BAM and the amplified will confirm, it's up here at higher levels, pretty close to the all-time high. Our current target is 3280. That's the 886. So until then, we'll look for it. And you know, the other thing I'm looking for is even a minimum amplified RSI BAM. Why? Because on the weekly level, look, we've got a complex structure here. So whatever this move is, I would expect some type of pullback that would get us back down. Now, we'll talk more about this week because we're going to look at some of the intraday situations where this is extremely helpful. This has been fantastic on these early morning sell-offs. Time and time again, you know, we've seen that they hit the oversold level and come back and retest the complex structure. So we'll be looking for that Monday. If you guys have any questions on this, absolutely reach out to me. The other thing I did mention is that It's available. The Volume 2 book is available to all gold members. So go to the gold member page, go to the gold members here. Let me just show you where you can get that. Yeah, but didn't that Wayfair chart look really good? I'm going to check that out. But scroll down on your gold member section here, log in, get the volume 2 and go through that and look at the complex structures and look at RSI BAM. I think that's really going to help. Again, what we've done with the software is to make the signaling as easy as possible. So the larger concepts of divergence and confirmation, I invite you to take a look at volume 2 and study it. It's great stuff to know. And we really do look for the combination of, here's a good one, of harmonic pattern at the confirmation point. Those are our ideal setups, but various components of all these strategies work incredibly well, and understanding where they are actually helps a lot of times in management. So that's what I have for today, folks. We'll be back on Monday. If you have any questions, go get the book first, then send me an email, and I'd be happy to answer it. So Monday, we'll be back, 9 a.m. Have a great weekend. Go get them.